If you could go back in time and give advice to your younger self, what would you say? What do you think your younger self needs to hear? What do you think your younger self needs to hear from you, your adult version of them? When was the last time that you allowed yourself to play, to be carefree, and to act like a kid? In today's episode, I'm going to share my inner child journey this summer and divulge why I dedicated this past summer to my inner child and why my summer and the following months have been so deeply and profoundly transformative and healing. And I'm going to share with you what I learned from prioritizing the joy, the needs, the safety, and the love of my inner child. Welcome to The Simple Source, your source for all things self-love, self-healing, personal growth, and spirituality. I'm your host, Linda Valines. I used to be chronically sick and unhappy. I spent years trying anything and everything to heal, but I never got better. It wasn't until my late husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer that I finally stopped searching for the answers outside of myself and turned within. I taught myself how to truly love and heal myself, how to finally be authentically healthy and happy, mind, body, and soul. I have over 10 years of personal and professional self-healing and teaching experience. I'm a trauma-informed, certified holistic health and wellness coach, certified Ayurvedic counselor, and author. I healed myself of a lifetime of complex traumas and chronic conditions with joy and ease. Now I'm teaching you to do the same. So if you're ready to heal and love yourself more, mind, body, and soul, without all the struggle and stress, and with more joy and productivity, join me to liberate your highest, healthiest, and happiest self and learn how to thrive more simply. Let's get started with today's episode. So our adult self is shaped by the experiences of our younger self because our core subconscious programming was formed when we were young kids, like namely from birth to around age 7, because during that time, the conscious part of our brain wasn't fully formed yet. And so we were basically purely operating from the subconscious parts of our brain, which means that the experiences that we had then formed the core of our subconscious programming. And our subconscious programming runs like 90% of our life. And so that means that our external reality is just a manifestation of our subconscious programming and the core beliefs of our subconscious programming. And so I did a whole episode about that. And I highly recommend that you dive into it so that you understand that that's how reality works and that our brains are largely run by our subconscious mind. And so that also means that our adult life is really just a reflection of the life of our inner child. And so your struggles, your dreams, your relationships, and your emotional patterns and your fears as an adult are also reflections of the unhealed, wounded parts of your inner child that need to be seen, that need to be validated, that need to be understood and loved and healed. That's why you're experiencing those issues as an adult, because they originated in your childhood and they were never resolved. And so your subconscious mind is still projecting that reality for you because that program is still looping, that program is still running, and that program is still operating in the deepest parts of you. And so I'm going to actually do a whole nother episode purely about the inner child and what the inner child, who the inner child is, what inner child healing work is, and why it is so central to healing in general, productive, authentic, lasting, holistic healing. But that's not this episode, but I am going to do that. That's on deck. This episode, I'm going to share my inner child summer, and I hope that it's going to inspire you to not only invest in your relationship with that deep inner child part of yourself, but to prioritize it. So why did I have an inner child summer? Let's start there. I was stuck in my professional and my personal growth. And that basically means that my manifestation work wasn't producing manifestations. So when our manifestations stop manifesting, that means that we are being invited. And it's okay, let's go back. When we're doing manifestation work, that's key. So like if you're not investing in the healing work that produces manifestations, which is subconscious healing work, and then you're not manifesting, it means that you are being invited to access a deeper layer of your healing and of yourself. So if you're just like, thinking positive, that's not really doing manifestation work. And so that's not what I'm talking about. So if you're investing in your healing journey, if you're investing in your personal growth in a really deep, profound, consistent way, and your external reality is not changing the way that you want it to, then you are being invited to go deep, friend. You're being invited to access a deeper layer of yourself and of your healing. And so I knew that that's what was happening. I was needing to go deeper and to acknowledge deeper layers of myself and heal those layers. So I knew I needed to turn within and give those core parts of myself where those blocks reside, i.e. my inner child, specific attention, intentional attention and love and healing. And that meant that I also realized that I needed to reconnect with my joy and my magic. And I was revisiting John Bradshaw's work earlier this year and was reminded how essential and how transformative and how necessary grief work is, not just for inner child work, but healing work in general. And so I set the intention, I'm going to honor my inner child this summer. I'm going to make her my priority. And so what I did is I put photos of her in different stages of my childhood around my house. That's my house in normal terms. And so around my house, there are photos of my inner child so that I could see her. And also my outer child, which is, my inner teenager. That's your inner teenager. That's your inner adolescent. And so I saw them every day. And my intention for the summer was just to prioritize her, my relationship with her, seeing her, validating her, acknowledging her needs and her desires, and particularly her joy. And that meant, watching what she wanted to watch, which was, 80s movies, stuff that empowered her, showed her that she could have what she wanted, basically showing her that her dreams were possible. So I watched a lot of those types of stories. We listened to a lot of 80s music. We sang so much. And that was so joyful. And we danced. And I let her cry, and I let her grieve, and I let her feel deeply, and I validated her experiences, and I gave her unconditional love. I saw her every day. I believed in her, and I supported her, and I was present for her every day. That was my intention for my inner child summer, and that's how I showed up every day for her. And because I was so committed to that nurturing of my relationship with her, to reigniting her joy and her magic and giving her full attention, it was such a powerful and joyful and magical and transformative and healing summer. And so this is what I learned. I'm going to share with you what I gained from that. So the first thing that I learned was that I needed to heal on a deeper level, because again, it's not like I haven't done any of this healing work, but when we get stuck in our growth, despite commitment and investment and a willingness to grow, and our external world isn't changing, we're being invited to move into a deeper layer of ourselves and of our healing. So this is what I learned, is I needed to go deep into emotional suppression, suppressed expression, and suppressed joy. So my joy and my authentic expression and my emotional expression were discouraged. They were criticized and shamed even, often when I was a child. And I was silenced in many ways. I wasn't allowed to have a voice. I wasn't allowed to have an opinion. I wasn't allowed to disagree. And then that made me feel like my life was a prison because I felt trapped. I felt trapped in a very small, very restrictive, very hostile, very unsafe environment every day where I wasn't seen, where I wasn't appreciated, where I wasn't loved and supported as my authentic self. That's a severe and deep wound. And I realized over the summer that I needed to validate that even more. I needed to grieve more aspects of that, and I needed to show up for Little. That's the name that I gave my inner child. I call her Little. And I needed to show up for Little for those experiences for her in a more intentional way. And that meant making space for Little to feel her joy, to feel those suppressed emotions, and to express what she didn't get to express in a way that felt safe for her, in a way where she felt revered and seen and loved. And so a consistent thread that came up for me over the summer was acknowledging the pain of having to hide my voice and to suppress my joy, both literally and metaphorically. You know, like I always knew from a very young age, I'm talking like 3-4 years old, that I wanted to be a performer. That was, I wanted to be like the next Madonna. And I was like convinced that was my life's path. And I was talented. And so, I was little, I was a toddler. It was funny and amusing. But as I got older, it became really discouraged. It's like, you're going to school to learn and be educated. You're not going to school to sing and dance. And so that authentic part of me became more and more suppressed, like literally silenced. And so that expression of who I was then figuratively was also suppressed. And so acknowledging the deep, profound pain of that suppression and my inability to express my authentic self and my authentic joy, because singing brought me so much joy as a child. That's all rooted in my early family dynamics where I didn't feel supported and validated. And of course, that left a really lasting, profound impact on my sense of self and my ability to express myself as an adult. And so that was a big theme that I worked through this summer. And so recognizing all of that and then giving Little space to express those unexpressed joys. Not that I ever stopped singing, but this summer something shifted because it was very intentional, because it wasn't just me singing, in the car, which I do like all the time. I haven't stopped doing that. But because my intention around the energy of that act, right? I was instead unconsciously doing it. Instead of unconsciously doing it, I was consciously doing it for Little. It changed the whole energy of it. And it was actually so moving. Like there were moments where I was like literally brought to tears and to my knees because that joy in her was reawakened just from singing. And it was so healing, and it created so much space for her. So that combination of intentionally creating reverence and safety for her to express all that she needed to express, while also grieving simultaneously very specific aspects of what I was not able to express as a child. That combination was so profoundly healing, and I was able then to reclaim parts of myself that needed to be reclaimed. And so that was such a powerful, powerful lesson. And another thing that I learned was that I had a lot more external validation and shame wounds to release. Despite nearly 15 years of healing work, there was still a lot of shame and shadow for me to acknowledge and release and integrate. And that came to the surface through all the grief work that I did this summer. and I continue to do. And that realization that my parents were never able to offer me the emotional support that I wanted in a different way. Because that's not like the first time that I've acknowledged that. I've clearly acknowledged that earlier in my life because that's a very, very prevalent wound for me. But acknowledging it in a different way this summer because I was doing such nuanced inner child healing work, making peace with that fact that my parents just have these limitations. And that's probably going to be how it remains for the rest of our lives. And having Little make peace with that and comforting her in the knowledge that that doesn't have anything to do with her or her self-worth. And she's still allowed to be an emotional creature because she is, we've had a moon in Cancer. We're a 1-3 generator in human design. We have emotional centers. We're very emotional beings, and giving her the agency to be emotional while also allowing her to understand that she is likely not going to get that emotional support from our parents. That was also really big and healing. And so I had to let go of a lot of suppressed needs for validation from my parents this summer. And then that, of course, required that I practice self-validation. And in practicing that on a more deep and integrated level was so healing. And also, again, in coherence with all the grief work that I did, grieving, not receiving the support that I wanted to receive from my parents regarding my dreams, regarding my talent, regarding my effort in trying to realize my dreams and have my talent recognized as a kid. Like grieving those very specific things was so deeply healing, because decades of childhood neglect, left me feeling so deeply unseen and unimportant, and that my dreams and my feelings and my existence didn't matter, that those were Little's narratives. And so that lack of validation created so much self-doubt and shame and feelings of unworthiness that were still running her subconscious programming. And that, of course, was my adult reality. And so, of course, then that impacted my professional pursuits. And that was why I was stuck. And so I had to reinforce to Little and to myself over and over and over again that, I am the source of her validation. And, we don't need anything externally, particularly from our parents as adults. That validation that I gave her this summer, that I continue to give her in regard to those very specific wounds of her talents and, her joys and her dreams not being validated and supported and seen and appreciated, that has greatly increased her sense of self-worth and allowed her to release so much shame and guilt and that need for external validation. And another thing that I learned from Little, because she is so wise, in my summer prioritizing her, is that I needed to heal deeper layers of abandonment and betrayal wounds. So the ongoing betrayal and the physical and emotional abandonment that I experienced over and over again as a child and as an adolescent, through various forms of abuse, left me feeling, again, really trapped, really alone, so isolated, and so deeply let down by the people who were meant to care for me the most. And so those wounds, of course, impacted my ability to not only trust myself, but to trust the other people in my life and to trust life in general, and also to trust the universe. This was really big for me this summer, realizing that my wounds around betrayal and abandonment weren't just about my parents, but because it was so ongoing, it was so consistent, so severe, it penetrated my inability to trust not just life, but the universe. And that was really profound to realize and grieve and heal and release, working through the nuanced themes of being let down, betrayed, and abandoned in my relationships because of that realization has been so healing. And I also learned from Little that I needed to dive deeper into my lifelong body image issues. So I touched upon this a little bit in a previous episode where I shared my journey of weaning off my thyroid medication naturally this summer, which is, it's a whole journey. But that was a really powerful affirmation with Little this summer, diving into those deeper layers of those body image issues and getting to a place of genuine empowerment where I was reconnected with my body and my body's wisdom in a much deeper core way, where I understood how truly resilient my body is and how truly beautiful it is. And I was able to reach a newfound level of appreciation for how remarkable and resilient it is, because it endured decades of trauma. It kept me safe through decades of trauma and many acts of violation and abuse as a child. And so I have developed this newfound love for my body, which has been so deeply healing and liberating. And again, I had to release a lot of layers of really deep grief related to not feeling safe in my body, not feeling beautiful in my body, not feeling worthy in my own body, in order to reclaim that empowerment and love for it. Because not feeling safe in your body, not feeling comfortable or grounded in your body, that's a profound need that's not met. That's a profound loss, So if you experience that needs to be grieved. And because of course that affects your self-worth. Of course that creates barriers to you feeling good enough. Your body is so central to how you experience the world. It is the vehicle for your soul's life in this journey. And another thing that I learned from Little is that even though Little is so incredibly resilient, she still needs my protection. And so I addressed deeper layers of my wounds around betrayal, like I said before, and also trust. And then in grieving those deeper layers and releasing deeper layers of anger because of the grief work, and deeper layers of hurt and disappointment regarding my parents betraying me, disappointing me, not being there for me, abandoning me, et cetera, that allowed me to see how all of that has played out in my adult relationships, and in a more nuanced way. Because again, that's not the first time I've had that realization. Of course not. I've realized that a long time ago. But again, we're doing really deep, core, wounded, nuanced healing work here. And so in working with those nuanced understandings of how all of those betrayals and disappointments have manifested in my adult relationships has created a stronger boundary and protection for my core inner self, Little, in relationships, so that she feels more confident. She feels more comfortable in her independence and in her agency and in her autonomy in relationships because of all that grief work, because of all of that release of that anger and hurt and disappointment and resentment, etc. And that happened because I created a stronger sense of safety for her, because I instilled a deeper sense of trust for her by being a constant source of protection, by being a constant presence for her this summer. And so that was an incredible lesson to move through and live through. And I also healed, this is also really important for me, I also healed deeper layers of my wounds around working too much, my self-worth being tied to productivity. So I'm a generator in human design, so I have a lot of fucking energy, particularly when I'm lit up about something, which my work does. My work lights me up. I'm very passionate about my work. So it's very easy for me to overextend myself professionally. So by prioritizing Little's needs and by prioritizing her joy and her fun and her magic this summer, I also intentionally healed deeper layers around that core wound that I need to prove myself, or I need to be perfect in order to be enough, in order to be lovable. Essentially, I need to work hard to get what I want, to belong, because my parents said to me over and over and over again, "Well, I grew up, I have to work hard in life," and so I had to really, in a nuanced way, work through a lot of those layers and grieve and what all of those losses were because of operating from that mindset, and so. In doing so, I've created so much more ease and flow in my life by integrating deeper layers of that healing. And it's been really so liberating to be able to just simply trust so much more in the fact that my talent and my gifts and my presence and my purpose have intrinsic value. Like knowing that on a core subconscious level, because little knows that, right? It's not about adult Linda, okay? She's not the one projecting and manifesting my reality, right? That's conscious mind. Little's the subconscious. And so her narrative has now changed where she has more intrinsic faith in her talent and gifts and purpose and her existence. And so that has naturally resulted in my adult relationship to my work changing to be more easeful and to be more self-trusting in my innate prowess. And so the past few months have just been so magical because of that ease, because of that deeper subconscious self-trust that I have cultivated with her. And another thing that I learned from my inner child summer was that I needed to heal deeper layers of my wounds regarding finances and scarcity and abundance, because that was something that I was blocked on. I've been blocked financially, and it's been frustrating because I've done so much, quote unquote, work around personal finance and healing lack mentality, etc. But this inner child summer for me has resulted in like a quantum leap in that aspect of my healing journey. Money was always an issue for me growing up. We're immigrants, so we literally had nothing when we came to this country. And so I grew up poor because we were poor. We had nothing. And that was my day-to-day reality until my parents achieved greater and greater professional and financial success. But even as their financial situation improved, they still operated from that scarcity mindset. That's a very common theme in the immigrant story. And so my relationship with money from the start was rooted in fear. It was rooted in lack and shame and guilt and a lot of shit tied to a deeply dysfunctional codependent family dynamic and with a parent with strong narcissistic traits. Money was a tool that was used to control me. And so, of course, that impacted my sense of safety around money and created a lot of shame around financial dependence and worth. And so this summer I did so much grief work around the loss of my joy and my needs not getting met due to that restrictive financial relationship as a child, and grieving the loss of the opportunities that I never got to experience because I felt so financially disempowered as an adult. That's been so fucking huge for me, so incredibly healing. For many people, self-worth and validation are like directly connected to money. And all of that is so deeply entangled in our childhood. And so my inner child summer cleared so much residual, deeply layered inner blocks with my relationship with money that has resulted in such a relaxed freedom now as an adult with it, which feels amazing. And the last thing that I want to share that my inner child summer taught me was that Little taught me how to more confidently own my power and trust myself more deeply. Because from all the intentional healing work, all the intentional grief work I did with her this summer, and then integrating all of that, I naturally feel more at ease in my whole authentic self. And that includes the whole force of my being. I'm a powerful fucking being with a powerful fucking purpose. And I have known that for my whole life. And I have struggled embodying that and owning that because of my childhood, because of so much shit that, I've covered in this episode. Not all of it. There's a lot there, but, really battling with that knowing and not feeling like I had anybody believing in me, not even myself. And so getting to a place now where I am owning that, where I'm less afraid of those truths, is such a liberation, because, that's why I'm here, is to own my power, to own my purpose, to own that I am an extraordinary being. And, instead of worrying about how I'm going to realize my highest purpose, which is a massive global consciousness shifting higher purpose that I've only just begun to express and embody, instead of worrying about how I'm going to realize that, I feel genuinely excited about that process. Instead of worrying about how I'm going to fulfill my highest potential, I now have like an easy confidence that I am just simply going to fulfill my highest potential. Instead of wondering if I'm going to meet myself on my highest path, I actually fully confidently know that I already am. And so in short, my eagerness to be seen as my whole authentic self is less driven by Little's previous wounds and more rooted in my highest self. And that's a massive breakthrough for me. So with all of that said, my inner child summer has turned into an inner child remainder of the year because it's catalyzed and accelerated so much personal healing and unblocked so much for me personally and professionally and spiritually. Though why would I stop that? The layers of healing and realization and self-empowerment that I've achieved from focusing on my relationship with Little this summer has been so profound. So, why would I stop that? Our inner child not only represents our early wounds, but they also represent our authentic self. And so when their wounds are healed, when you can fully understand and embrace and resolve the layers of shame and your unmet needs and the traumas and everything that your inner child didn't experience and didn't receive, what you're doing is you're giving yourself genuine self-acceptance. What you're doing is you're practicing genuine self-worth and self-love. And that's what reclaiming your inner child is. It's ultimately reclaiming your authenticity, which is ultimately reclaiming your joy. And so this summer I was living more authentically than I have in a really long time. And that's why my manifestations are no longer stagnated. And magic has now, again, become a daily norm, and it's fucking awesome. So making Little's joy a priority, prioritizing seeing her, validating her, loving her, believing in her every single day, and reconnecting with my childhood dreams and grieving very specific losses and grieving very specific dreams that were unfulfilled has naturally created the room in my adult life for more joy and for the actualization of my current dreams. And that's what true healing requires. Grieving is such a big part of that. Inner child work is such a huge part of that. I did a whole episode on grieving that I highly recommend that you revisit. Grieving and inner child work, I think, go hand in hand. And grieving is so liberating when it's done intentionally and productively, because it is so necessary for inner child reclamation and healing and to truly embody our whole authentic selves, because those parts of ourselves that we don't acknowledge, that we don't grieve, they trap our subconscious programming in those wounded, trauma-based narratives. So this summer and throughout the remainder of the year, and honestly, throughout the remainder of my life, this connection that I have to my authentic self, which is what John Bradshaw calls the wonder child, your core self, the free, liberated inner child, is just, I know, is going to be one of the most rewarding and liberating things that I'll do for myself. So healing, by definition, is a reclamation of your freedom. And so what I did this summer is I reclaimed my past by reclaiming my inner child. And because of that, I liberated my past. And that means that I liberated my present. And that also means that I liberated my future, because in showing up for my present life more fully, more empowered, more joyfully as my whole authentic self, my entire future is going to change. So here's your action step for the week. I hope that I've inspired you with my inner child summer and inspired you to connect with your inner child. So I want you every single day this week to see your inner child, age 5, age 6, age 7. See them here from your heart space, not here touching my head, because that can be an illusory place. Envision them from your heart and see them and tell them that you see them. Tell them that they matter. Tell them that their existence matters. Tell them that their joy matters, that their feelings matter, that what they want matter, that their experiences matter, and tell them that you love them. Tell them that you love them and that you will always be there for them, and mean it. That's so important. Sincerely show up for your inner child, which is really you showing up for yourself in a sincere, authentic, and present way, where you are not thinking about what you have to do at the end of the day. You're not thinking about what you want to watch on Netflix later. You are fully engaged with that core, special, remarkable, incredible aspect of yourself, and revering them and loving them. And I guarantee if you do that every single day for at least a week, you're going to experience major internal shifts, because you are opening the pathway to a depth and a profundity of healing that is going to naturally manifest in major external shifts, because you are telling yourself, you are telling your highest self, you're telling the universe that you are accepting your whole self and willing to be there and validate and love your whole self. And that, my friend, is what healing is all about. And when you show up for yourself in a healing way that way, every single day, there is no way that your life isn't going to change for the better. Thank you so much for joining me today in The Simple Source. I hope this episode has inspired you, reminded you of your healing power, and reawakened you to who your true and highest self is. If the show has empowered and enlightened your self-love, growth, and healing journey, please share this episode, leave a positive review on Apple or Spotify, and subscribe to be reminded of new episodes. I am so grateful for your presence, and all of your comments and your support are seen and read and deeply appreciated. They really do help this show so much. Also, sign up for my newsletter, The Weekly Source, to get more healing tips, motivation stories, and to get to know me better. And if you haven't read my book, Unconditional, You Are Perfect As You Are, I invite you to get your copy today and start reading. And lastly, I would love to see you inside my Source membership, the only holistic and comprehensive step-by-step self-healing program that is proven to work. It's time to stop struggling to heal, and time to learn how to thrive more simply and joyfully. All the links are in the show notes. Thanks again for joining me today, and I will see you next time.